Vampire Coast are, without a doubt, the best themed faction in the game. Their mechanics and visuals just scream undead pirates, and it makes them an absolute treat to play as. They're also one of the stronger factions with a ton of mechanics that allow them to snowball towards the late game at a pace that few factions can match. Let's first go over the pros and cons of the campaign gameplay. Their shipbuilding allows them to get full stacks of endgame units faster than almost every other faction, even if they're in enemy territory. Raising Dead is as strong here as it was for the Vampire Clans. You can instantly recruit entire armies if you do it right, and the chance of units just resurrecting post-battle is always amazing. And finally, the constant treasure hunting and pirate coves make their economy extremely robust, especially for an evil faction with limited access to trading. As for the cons, corruption is still a bit of a pain if you can't spread it quickly, and will slow you down a lot if you're struggling to spread it. Having two of their mechanics requiring you to roam the seas can take up a ton of time, especially on this brand new and very chunky map. And finally, failing to properly manage loyalty can result in you losing lords and armies that you've sank time and money into, making it all the more frustrating when you then need to take them out. Let's now go over the different factions of the Vampire Coast. First up we have the Awakened, and this is led by Luther Harkon. For his faction effects, he has plus 60 relations with the followers of Nagash, minus 100 relations with Vampire Coast mutineers, 6 melee defense for lords and embedded heroes, and minus 60 relations with all lizardmen. As for Luther's army, they spread 3 vampiric corruption wherever they go, gain 8 leadership when fighting versus lizardmen, and gain 25% spell resistance. His starting location is of course in the Awakening, and for his starting units, he gains 3 units of zombie pirate deckhands mob, 3 units of zombie pirate gunnery mob, a bloated corpse, some scurvy dogs, some animated hulks, some handgun deck droppers, some regular deck droppers, and some mortars. And he also starts with a gunnery white hero. The climate preferences, they are the same for every single one of these factions, so I'm only going to mention it once. Frozen, ocean, temperate island, savanna, desert, and jungle are suitable, wasteland and mountain are unpleasant, and magical forest and chaotic wasteland are uninhabitable. To get the short campaign victory as Luther, you must restore his mind and occupy, loot, raise, or sack 30 different settlements. So to restore Luther's mind, you need to build the ancient vault in the Awakening settlement, so rush some growth to get this going. You'll also need to complete the quest battle for Slang Gold, which you'll just unlock by playing. Focus on growth in the Awakening, so save up cash to build it up whenever you can. While that's happening, just expand across Lustria, taking out as many lizards as you can. Start with the initial war, then spread out from there, focusing on legendary lords when you can to curb their progress and catch them while they're weak. If you keep up with everything, you should get to that short victory surprisingly quickly. Next up we have the Dread Fleet, and they are led by Count Noctilus. His faction gains unique war declaration missions which provide him with rewards. This is normally currency, and then another benefit such as temporary army and campaign buffs. His faction also gains 60 relations with the followers of Nagash, 2 to horde recruitment capacity, and minus 1 recruitment duration for Necrofex Colossus units. His army also gains minus 20% upkeep for Necrofex Colossus units, and plus 15% weapon strength for all large units. His faction starts in the Galleon's Graveyard, and for their starting units they gain Depth Guard, 3 zombie pirate deckhands mob, 2 handguns zombie pirate gunnery mob, and a Necrofex Colossus, because that's balance. They also gain a gunnery white hero. For their victory conditions, they simply need to accumulate 8,000 infamy, as well as occupy, loot, raise, or sack 30 different settlements. So for these guys, you can pretty much do whatever you want as Noctilus, since you just have to grind a bunch of infamy and mess with a bunch of different settlements. The starting wars against the High Elves give you a good start with this, as you can either occupy and take a bunch of their land, or simply sack and raise to farm resources to build up Noctilus's shipbuilding. Once they're taken care of, go wherever you want. Lustria is just a short distance away if you want to take on lizards, or you can head east to Bretonnians and more in the old world. The choice really is yours in this big fat map, so keep fighting and you'll be there in no time. Next we have the Pirates of Sartosa. These are led by Aranessa Saltspite. The faction gains minus 100 relations with Norska, plus 25% to the chance of finding treasure maps, plus 50% income from raiding, and plus 20% income from sacking settlements. Her army also gains plus 8 melee attack and plus 20% weapon strength for all Sartosan units. The faction starts, of course, at Sartosa, and a starting army gains 2 Sartosa Free Company, 2 Deck Gunners, 2 Sartosa Militia, some Bomber Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mob, some Scurvy Dogs, and some Rotting Prometheans. And a faction also starts with a gunnery white hero. To achieve the short victory here, you need to destroy the Dread Fleet and control the Galleon's Graveyard either directly or by alliances and vassals, as well as occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. Since you just have the one goal of taking out the Dread Fleet, all you really need to do is build up the best army you can and then sail out to take him on. You may as well take out Tillier since they're at the starting war and right on your doorstep. This will give you plenty of XP and gold to build up Aranessa's ship and start recruiting some actually good units. Once they're taken care of, you can honestly go wherever you want. You can continue to sneak past Ikit and into Estalia, following it around to Bretonnia if you really wanted. You could simply set sail and raid any coastline you come across, from the High Elves to Cathay with the new sea lanes. Just grind ship growth and money and make a big fat stack. Once you feel ready, then head on over to the Galleon's graveyard and take him on. Once he is taken out, just keep grinding settlements until you're done. And our final faction is the Drowned, and they are of course led by Silostria Deerfan. Per faction, she gains +2 loyalty for new recruits and -20% upkeep and recruitment cost for Cyrene and Mongol units. Her army gains magical attacks and 5% physical resistance for all units. The faction starts in the Twisted Glade, and for a starting army, she gains units of Cyrenes, 3 units of Pole Arm Zombie Pirate Deckhands, 4 units of Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mob, some Mongols, and some Carronades. And she also starts with Robert Barthélemy, a unique Damned Paladin hero. To get the short victory as her faction, you need to gain the first verse of the Sea Shanty and occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. This is another one where you can pretty much do whatever you want, since all you need to do is grind infamy until you overtake the guy who holds the first verse of the Sea Shanty. Once you do that, he'll appear, try and attack you, so just chase him down, beat him in a battle, and boom, you've secured verse 1. We're of course going to cover this in more detail in a little bit, but real quick, the best way to grind infamy is raising settlements, battling a lot, assassinations, and pirate coves. If you keep doing these as often as you can safely manage, then you should climb the infamy ladder in no time. Plus, doing this pushes you towards those 30 settlements, so by the time you get the shanty, you'll probably be close to completing that too. Now we come to the faction mechanics. First up, we have shipbuilding. Some lords in the Vampire Coast have access to a mechanic called shipbuilding. This basically transforms them from regular lords that can recruit from settlements to hordes that can recruit from themselves no matter where they are on the map, even in enemy territory. The only lords that can do this are the 4 legendary lords that lead the factions, as well as 4 legendary admirals in the research tree. Inside these hordes or ships, they can build a large number of buildings. You have recruitment for every unit in the roster, various buffs to their army in campaign, as well as battle, and a couple that are unique to each lord. For the most part, it's better to build up these ships and recruit from them rather than investing time and gold on upgrading settlements, since you can't exactly pick up settlements and recruit them from wherever you want. Of course, non-legendary lords will still need to recruit from buildings, but you can always gift them armies and units from your legendary lords, then simply recruit a whole new and maybe better one for them. Use settlements for income and not much else, and build these ships up as fast as you can, since they are the quickest way to get to endgame units. Next up, we have pirate coves. These are very similar to undercities from the Skaven, but are a little bit simpler. They can either be established with vampire fleet captain heroes or as a post-battle option on a settlement. Although if you use the fleet captains, they do have a 15-turn cooldown between building them, so you can't spam them too often. They allow you to choose from one of 4 buildings to build under that settlement to focus on different things: character focus, corruption, stealing income from the host settlement, or set income and research. Of course, the best choice depends on where you build it, but targeting economic powerhouses with income stealing is a fast track to fat stacks. Next we have infamy. This is a currency that causes you to climb a ladder, as you can see at the top of the screen. On this ladder, you have all 4 legendary lords, which will rise and fall depending on their actions. As well as this, you have 10 other lords, which are roaming pirate factions that generally will not take kindly to being overtaken by you, particularly the green factions in possession of the legendary sea shanty. This is an army ability that only gets stronger as you collect more verses, so it's well worth seeking it out whenever you can, but you generally just do it by playing the game anyway. You gain infamy from doing pretty much what you should be doing in any campaign. You gain it from battling, raising settlements, assassinating characters, and establishing and building inside of pirate coves. This can also be spent on semi-legendary lords in the research tree who, as I mentioned earlier, are the only other lords that are able to use shipbuilding, so are well worth the price. You don't really need to grind this one too hard since it's just so easy to accumulate by simply playing the game, so climb those ranks, defeat legendary pirates, and become the most feared on all the seas. Next up we have Pieces of 8, and we're not even halfway through these mechanics yet. Where regular factions unlock regiments of renown by leveling up their faction leader, the vampires instead must collect Pieces of 8 to unlock each one. These are being held by roaming pirate armies that will move around the oceans of the world. They can be tracked by the treasure menu, so you can track them down pretty easily once you're ready to take them on. You will need some pretty beefy armies to take on these guys, since they are pretty stacked right out the gates, but once you can take on one, you can likely hunt down the rest and collect them all. Now come to loyalty. This one is real quick. Every non-legendary lord has a loyalty level. If this level falls too low, then the lord will rebel and take that army with them to form a new faction at war with yours. Lords in the Vampire Coast all start with a trait that indicates certain actions that will improve their loyalty. If they rebel, this obviously loses the lord, their levels, and their army, so keep them topped up by giving them plenty of units, sharing loot post-battle, and performing the actions shown in their starting trait. Just keep the levels high and you don't need to worry about this one, and if you can manage to get them to rank 30, then you can grab a skill that means they will never lose loyalty again, so you can really stop worrying about it. Next we have officers. The vampires can also bestow office roles onto their lords upon reaching certain levels. These roles provide buffs to the lords and their armies, as well as the faction as a whole. On top of this, the lords with office roles gain improved loyalty, making them less likely to revolt. This one is pretty simple. Just drop lords into roles that will benefit your faction in the most useful way at the time and reap free benefits. Now we come to treasure maps. These are found all the time when playing as the vampires. You can find them post-battle, when digging up other treasure, searching ruins, or seeing encounters. These maps will give you a rough area on the map to search for treasure, as well as a clue in the form of a vague riddle. Use the area and the clue to search for the treasure and then move a lord or hero there before using the dig for treasure stance or action depending on who's there. area. If you find the right area, you'll receive gold as well as items, and sometimes more maps to keep you searching. I like to send out a hero whose entire job it is to treasure hunt to keep gold coming over the course of the campaign. Next up we have Raised Dead, and this is the exact same as the vampire count, but instead you summon units from the coast roster, so I'm going to steal my notes from that. Alongside regular recruitment, you can raise dead to fight for you instantly. This is normally a very limited pool of their units and capacities to choose from, so most of the time you're looking at nothing better than deckhands and bloated corpses. However, if a large battle has taken place on a map, a battle site is created, which are indicated with this icon. Raising the dead near to one of these battle sites will grant you an increased capacity and much higher tier units depending on the size of the battle that took place. It's also worth noting that you don't have to be involved in the battle to create a battle site, so late in the game, these things will be everywhere. This can allow you to instantly fill armies with units to save a bunch of time on recruitment, bail you out if you need an army quick or don't have the recruitment buildings in place, or even allow you to add units to your army whilst deep in enemy territory, alongside shipbuilding of course. I'd say most of the time to use normal recruitment if you can get the same or higher quality units, and save battle sites when you're caught out or in a rush. This will take a little bit longer, but will give you backup when you need it most. Alongside the manual raising of the dead, there's also this passive called the Dead Rise Again, and it just boils down to this. After a battle, if you've lost entire units, there is a chance they will automatically resurrect themselves at low HP, just like they never died in the first place. You can increase the chances of this happening with skills, research, corruption, and the healing option post-battle. Again, this is still chance-based, so you don't want to rely on it too hard, but if you stack the odds in your favour, you can make your armies very difficult to get rid of. They also have Vampiric Corruption, and again, this is the exact same as the Vampire count, so I'm going to steal my notes once more. Wherever you go, you spread this stuff with your lords, heroes, and a number of buildings. At low levels, your armies will suffer attrition and your settlements corruption penalties. At high levels, your armies will be just fine, and all non-vampiric armies will be the ones suffering from attrition. Alongside this, armies will also have an increased chance that the dead will rise again post-battle, and that they will rise at an increased HP level. And to top it all off, your settlements will gain 10 control, and all other forms of corruption will be reduced by 5. So to summarise that, enemies in your lands will take constant damage, your settlements will be super happy without the need for any other buildings, it's much harder for enemy corruption to take root, and your armies have a high chance of just bringing themselves back to life. If you haven't gathered already, you should be spreading this as much as possible in your own lands, and then into lands you plan attacking to give yourself an easier time moving in. And finally, our last mechanic is the Rights. Like all Warhammer 2 factions, the Vampires have access to 4 Rights, which are abilities that provide the faction with buffs for a short time. Curse of the Sea Mist protects your lands from foreign armies and buffs many units with Vanguard deployment. Curse of Eternal Service increases loyalty and control, Curse of the Queen's Cannon unlocks a Queen Best unit for recruitment, and the Curse of Bountiful Treasure grants you 500 gold for every building in the Buried Treasure chain. Now we come to the Lord skills. First up we have Luther Harkon. We're going to start with Root March here, since it can never be a bad start, and then Ghost Fleet is great for replenishment, as well as either Freebooter or Sea Dogs depending on your preference. Go on account to get to Living Ship for rushing ship growth, then Lightning Strike to grab Black Flak. Go into Fractured Mind as soon as you can and grab buffs as they become useful to you and your army. The Inspiring Presence line is a great choice to buff your late game units, so this is going to mostly be ranged units and monsters. Everything on the Hunger row is pretty great, so grab all of those, and then the top row makes him more tanky, which is great once he gets on his mount. And finally, Monkey Jacket will do for any spare points at the end to make him into a better battler. Next up we have Count Noctilus. He has the same start as Luther. Root Marcher, Ghost Fleet, then Freebooter or Sea Dogs. Then we're going to go into his spells, since it's a pretty hot combo with him getting the Wind of Death and Pit of Shades at the end. Once you can, you should grab the Master of the Dread Fleet line, since pretty much everything is top tier in there. Then you can return to the blue line and same as before, get Go on Account, Living Ship and Lightning Strike to get Black Flak, Inspiring Presence to buff endgame units, top row for some tankiness, then Monkey Jacket for any points at the end. Baroness Assault Spite is next up. Same start as the rest. Root Marcher, Ghost Fleet, Freebooter or Sea Dogs. Go on Account, Living Ship, Lightning Strike and then Black Flag. Everything on the Forger row is great to grab all of those once you can. Then you can also go into the Mutant line once you can to buff herself and the faction. The Inspiring Presence line to buff endgame units, then the top row for some tankiness, and Monkey Jacket for any points at the end for fighting. So Illustria Deer Fan, again, same start as the rest. Root Marcher, Ghost Fleet, Freebooter, Sea Dogs. Then we're going to go into her spells and grab pretty much everything, since this lot is a lot of fun, even if it's not the most superbly effective. Then you can grab upgrades to her Ghosts of the Past whenever you are able, since it's unique to her and summons can never be bad. At the end you can choose between 2 options, and I like to go for Sacrilege, since Battling Cav are much more useful in battle, especially with this faction. Her From the Depths line has a bunch of buffs for her and the army, so go into that as soon as you can, and the Inspiring Presence line can then be used to buff endgame units. Top row for some more tankiness, and then Monkey Jacket for fighting. And we only have one type of generic lord, though they do have a couple of variations. The Vampire Fleet Captains can either come with a pistol or a polearm, and can come with a Law of Death, Deeps, or Vampires. No matter what, you're going to start the same as the rest. Root Marcher, Ghost Fleet, Freebooter, and Sea Dogs, then go into their spells, whichever law you go for, you got some great ones to choose from. Once you can pick a level 9, do it, and I like to go for either Smuggler or Arsonist, go back to the blue line and go Lightning Strike and Combing and Preservative, and then Black Flag. Inspiring Presence to buff endgame units, then the top row for more tankiness and Monkey Jacket for fighting. Grab Loyal to the end as soon as you can to keep them with you no matter what. The only difference between the weapon types is the second half of the Monkey Jacket row, and the Legendary Admirals also have the same skill trees but come with Immortality right out the gate, and you don't ever have to worry about loyalty. Now come to our heroes, and we have the one and only legendary hero, Robert Bartholomew. On the campaign map, he can assault garrisons, assassinate enemy heroes, assault units, spread control wherever he goes, and replenish troops when embedded in an army. You can either use this lad for campaign assassinations or for battle. For the campaign map, it's the classic assassinate, specialist, and then the rest of the bottom row aside from replenish. For battle, we're grabbing replenish first since it's never a bad thing for the undead, and then get everything on the cold blade row since they are pretty much all bangers. The blade master line of course has buffs to him in combat, and you can make him extremely tanky whilst also dealing a ton of damage, so go wild. The top row has missile resist, which is pretty nice, and then spread control if you have anything left. Next we have the vampire fleet captains. On the campaign map, these can establish pirate coves, wound, assault units, spread control, and replenish troops when embedded in an army. You can grab these guys in the Lore of Death, Deeps, or Vampires. You can either use these guys as pirate cove machines or spellcasters in your army. If you want the coves, then obviously grab that, then specialist, and the rest of the blue line except replenish. Grab bribery when you can, and you're sorted. For battle, of course, grab replenish troops, then dive into the spell line and grab any spells that you like from your chosen lore. Once that's done, Monkey Jacket also makes them better battlers, so it's great for even more value out of them. And grab deception and kidnapping once you can, then some top row toughness and spread control to finish up. Next up we have the Mongol Haunters. On the campaign map, these can damage buildings, assassinate, hinder replenishments, spread corruption, and scavenge when embedded in an army. These can either be campaign assassins or sneaky battlers. For the campaign, you just go the blue line, starting with assassinate and specialist, then ignore scavenge, and you're all done. For battle, go scavenge first for free money, then into Monkey Jacket to make them even better at fighting. Everything on the killing cold line is worth grabbing, so do it as soon as you can. Go on the top row for some extra toughness, then spread corruption to close out. And our final hero are the Gunnery Wise. On the campaign map, these can steal technology, wound, block armies, boost income, and provide training when embedded in an army. These guys should be exclusively used in your armies purely for the buffs they provide to your missile units. Training is a great place to start with that free XP, then go into Cackle Fruit and grab everything in that line aside from Shark Bait for some amazing buffs to ranged units in the army. The Always Ready line will make their own missiles more powerful, so go into this next to get them actually doing something in combat, and the top row makes them tanky, which is nice once they're on the mount. And then boosting income will do for spare points at the end, since who doesn't love money. Now we come to the commandments. First up we have Dredge the Sea. This provides 15 growth, minus 10 recruitment cost for zombie units, and plus 1 to local recruitment capacity. I like to leave this one on as my default since rushing growth is never a bad thing, and then also if you're recruiting any armies, it's also brilliant for extra recruitment and cost reduction. Share the Spoils causes loyalty to not decline for local armies, and plus 5 control at the cost of 10 infamy per turn. I would only use this one if you are desperately trying to keep control in a province, or if you have an army that is on the brink of rebelling and you desperately need to save it. Don't leave it on no matter what, because losing 10 infamy per turn over a commandment is a little bit extreme. Even More Powder provides minus 7 attrition when under siege, plus 1 to local recruitment capacity faction wide, and plus 25% ammunition for local armies. This one's obviously great if you're under attack in the province, since it will buff your armies with extra ammo and cause you to take less attrition when under siege, which is very powerful these days. Once a province reaches max size in all the settlements, turning this one on as default is pretty great if you're using global recruitment, but again, we're using shipbuilding here, so it's not overly important. And finally we have Bat Swarms. This causes minus 20% campaign move range for enemy units starting their turn in the province, and plus 2 to vampiric corruption. This of course is a good one for slowing down enemies moving through your lands, as well as spreading the corruption once you've just moved into a place to maintain control. And finally we come to the tech tree. The vampire research tree is separated into 4 areas. Command is infrastructure, characters, and the odd army buff, as well as a few unique followers. Firepower of course focuses on buffing missile units in the faction. Salvage has buffs for monsters in the faction, and of course the legendary admirals are those lords that you can recruit by spending infamy. At the start I would spend some time in command to get settled into the campaign with that infrastructure, then go and spend a ton of time in firepower since missile units carry your battles at every stage of the game. Once you're happy here, then monsters are also a great choice to focus on. Grab admirals whenever you have the infamy and fancy a new lord, since they are so much better than regular lords with that shipbuilding. That is everything you need to know to play the Vampire Coast in campaign, and we've got the battle guide coming on Friday to run you through the entire roster as well as compositions and more, so subscribe if you want to see that. Hoping to hit 50k by the end of the year, so I would appreciate the assistance. If you enjoyed this video and or found it useful, then consider dropping it a like. If you really enjoy the content and want to support it directly, then consider becoming a member here on YouTube or a patron on the Patreon. Doing so gets you early insights into future content, increased voting power and discounts on merch, as well as shoutouts at the end of videos just like Henry Tucker, Fizz Sport at the offices tier. Thank you to all supporters. One last thank you for watching, and for now, I've been Colonel Damneders, and I will see you next turn.